What's up, folks? Good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are in the world right now. It's great to be here, coming at you live from a fine, almost summer evening, right here from the heart of London, England. My greetings to my friends in the US, everywhere where you are on the western east coast, everyone in Australia, India, namaste, you should be all up in the morning, and everybody right here in the UK with me, my fellow Brits. It's a late Monday evening, and I wanted to share some wisdom that's been coming my way, and something that's really come up for a number of our coaching clients right now. And a number of the clients that I'm coaching with, my team are coaching, have come up with this one common thing, which is resistance. Resistance, that big R. It's R-rated, right? Resistance is an R-rated thing, like a movie. It's not for everybody. And therefore, resistance has been the theme of a lot of challenges that have been showing up for some of our coaching clients. And I've been dealing with a couple of coaching clients just in the past week where they've come across a barrier and they can't seem to go beyond it. Can you relate to that? Have any of you experienced resistance showing up in your life? Resistance, and let me give you some examples. Maybe you can relate to some of these examples. Here's one. Resistance in your personal growth, right? There's something that's holding you back in terms of your ability to move on. It could be that you don't feel you're good enough. So there's resistance in terms of your self-confidence. And you can't go on that stage and make that talk. You can't go and perform at that concert. You can't step up and make that presentation or take that promotion because it's that resistance, because you don't believe in yourself. That self-confidence is lacking. So you're facing a resistance barrier. Or it could be resistance in forgiving. You're finding it difficult to forgive a person or a situation or yourself. And that's showing up as resistance. So you can't go beyond it. You want to make friends with that person, or you know that you should try and reconnect with that person, or you know it's not good for you to hold that grudge against that person, but that resistance to forgive is showing up. It makes sense? What about other areas of your life? What about your physical resistance, right? Resistance with regards to our health and our well-being, resistance to exercise. How many of us can relate to that, right? We don't want to exercise. We feel it hard to go and exercise or do something like this. So resistance in exercise, resistance in our diet, right? The resistance is the resistance to do the right thing. I'm going to keep saying this R word a hell of a lot in this short live, because it's about recognizing when resistance is showing up and then how it shows up for us. For some, it might be, it's too hard. I don't want to go to the gym. Or in this case, I don't want to go walking outside. It was much easier to go to the gym, right? So that's resistance showing up. It could be in your diet. You've had such a tough day. You don't want to go and be disciplined and eat less food, or you don't want to exercise that discipline when it comes to more simple and modest food choices. You want to have the sweet things. We all want to have that. So resistance can show up there. What about relationships? Resistance in relationships. How about romantic relationships? I've been a victim of this. Relationship resistance. When you feel it's hard for you to commit to somebody, right? Commitment, a lack of commitment or a fear of commitment is that resistance showing up when you've been in a relationship. And I've been there. I'm sure some of you have been there, where you've been in a relationship, it's gone down the road, it's gone kind of well. You've had a few ups and downs, but it's gone okay. And it's time to commit. It's time to actually go and officially say you're a couple, and you've got resistance coming up. Or maybe you don't want to get, or you've gone further down the line and you feel it's time to get married or get engaged. And there's this resistance, this wall that comes up. There's a fear of commitment. You don't want to go beyond that point because you've been hurt before. You don't know if you can trust them real deeply. You're not sure if you're going to last in a long-term relationship. Your benchmark has been a really poor, crappy chain of poor relationships. So resistance starts to come up in the form of fear of commitment, or the fear of loving, or the fear of being loved. Maybe you fear that if you're loved, then that person will leave you, and then what will happen? Or if you love that person real deeply and they leave you. So that fear causes you a resistance to then progress in that relationship. Does any of this relate? I'm hoping some of this relates to you. How about resistance in your career, right? If you're a leader, you know that you felt this resistance at some stage when you wanted to ascend the career ladder. It's reluctance to accept certain roles or to stay in the same role. You don't want to stay in the same role. Right now, especially when people are now beginning to re-enter their full-time work, when people are beginning to transition back into employed work, coming out of furlough, some people are facing resistance because they're reluctant to go back into the same role. They don't feel like they want to do it. They're great time furloughing. Now there's this resistance. It's kind of like a laziness, apathy. You get what I mean? It could be laziness. It could be apathy. It could be just a fear of boredom. You don't want to do the same thing anymore. Or maybe it's resistance to stepping up because you've now got a position, an opportunity to step up. Somebody else has been moved away. You can take that next step, but you're scared. You might not be able to do it. It's fear of taking that big step. Or stepping down. Maybe you need to take a step down because life is bad. And a lot of contractors right now, if you're a contractor out there or a freelancer, you'll know what this is like. Sometimes you've had to take lower paid positions, but you don't want to because there's that resistance. The ego gets in the way. Fear gets in the way. You don't want to take a lower pay cut. Your pride gets in the way. So all of these different things are forms of resistance. So I'm hoping you can relate to this because I know personally for myself, I can relate to a lot of these. I've rejected jobs because I think they're beneath me. And I've been scared to take positions higher up because I think it'll be just too much and I'm not going to cope. And so I think this is a theme for all of us, that in some way or other, we face this resistance. So I want to talk about what we can do to start addressing it and a few tips that I've experienced and I've shared with some of my clients right now and some of the team that's actually helping to overcome that resistance. And let me share a couple of these with you. Okay. First tactic for facing resistance: expect it. So let me explain this. Have you been waiting sometimes at home for your loved one to turn up, right? She's been away or your kids are waiting for you at the door because you've been on a business trip. You're coming back after a busy business trip. And you notice the kids are at the door waiting for you to welcome you, or you're waiting for your loved one, right? You've had this experience, right? And you're waiting for that person who's come. It's their birthday. You're eagerly anticipating their arrival to say, surprise. Anticipate it. Welcome it. Be ready and waiting for that resistance to turn up, knowing that that resistance will come, because by being prepared and expecting resistance to show up, by being there yourself up front, you're in a position, a more empowered position to face it, to be able to address it, to be able to deal with it. So tip number one is to mentally prepare and accept that resistance will occur. Knowing that it will happen doesn't mean that you know which shape or form, but you know your personality. So knowing your personality, knowing who you are, becoming self-aware, emotionally self-aware, you can look at how you can address that resistance by being ready and being prepared to welcome it, whatever it brings. Okay, tip number 2, lean into the resistance. I love this analogy of weight training or resistance training. And I'm a big fan of being in the gym and working out, or free weights workout. And one of the nicest experiences from a satisfaction perspective is to be going into the gym and really pushing yourself, feeling that pain, and then working through that pain. And that's characteristic of a lot of types of training. Weight training, I think, or resistance training is a great example, because you have to push through the distance to get to the other side. And that means that as you shift, as you exercise your will to move the weight with the power of your muscles, you start to feel that resistance of the weight, and the weight feels a lot. And you can feel at one stage, they call it sticking points in weight training, where you feel you can't shift the weight anymore. At that stage, you may get a spotter. Somebody gives you a slight hand, or you make a slight hand adjustment, and you dig your heels in, and then you push through and you work through that resistance. By working through that resistance and feeling the strain of the weight on your muscles, there's a certain sense of accomplishment when you complete that rep or complete that set of exercise. And that is what I want to invite you to use as a metaphor for resistance when it shows up. If resistance is showing up in your life, start to look at it as something you want to lean into. Not run away from, but lean into. And by leaning into it, leads us to tip number 3. You get to exercise these 2 types of muscles, your flexibility muscle and your curiosity muscle. Let me explain to you, my friends, why I feel these muscles are so important. Your flexibility muscle is the muscle that allows you to be able to allow yourself to be navigated or orientated in different positions when resistance shows up. So rather than trying to run away when resistance shows up, you can move to the left, you can move to the right, and you can work with it, like almost like somebody who's surfing a wave, right? Somebody doesn't cut through the wave and go through it, they ride the wave. And so flexibility is about riding the wave of resistance that comes up for me, right? And curiosity, that curiosity muscle is about reframing the resistance that's showing up. What would it be like, and this is a meditation for you, what would it be like to navigate through this rather than avoiding it? Using this analogy of the wave, the surfer over the wave, rather than trying to fight your way through the wave, the ocean wave coming at you, the wave of resistance. How about riding that wave and seeing where it takes you? So now you're getting curious, you're exercising your curiosity muscle by asking yourself, what's on the other side of this resistance? What could I be missing out on? And that leads to another powerful concept that we often get victims of and get used by or abused by, which is FOMO. The fear of missing out, right? How many of you have had this, right? FOMO, the fear of missing out. And FOMO gets the better of so many of us, right? We get caught up and we feel that we're going to miss out on something, and then we get made a fool out of, right? Fear of missing out causes us to get into a lot of trouble. Time dissipation, energy is lost, months are lost, years are lost, money is lost. FOMO causes a lot of trouble for us, but not, my friends, if we use FOMO to our advantage. And that's what we can do by reframing that resistance that comes up and saying, hey, what am I going to miss out on if I don't work through this resistance? What's on the other side of this resistance? And so by exercising your curiosity muscles and reframing what might be waiting on the other side of that resistance, guess what? You create the opportunity of something bigger. You are waiting to find the higher version of yourself on the other side of that resistance. It's the fear of missing out on what's on the other side, because if you don't work through that resistance, then you don't push past the existing comfort zone, the boundary that we're in. And if you don't push past that, then you will always achieve the same results that you've always had. Does that make sense? So in summation, tips are, number 1, expect resistance. Be ready at the doorstep to welcome resistance as if they're your friend or family member coming to a birthday bash that you've arranged for them, right? Tip number 2, lean into the resistance. Just like in weight training, grab the weight, embrace it, and push through it and feel it. Feel the weight of resistance working through. Tip number 3, exercise your flexibility and curiosity muscles. Ride the wave rather than trying to fight through the wave. And be curious of what waits on the other side of your resistance, and use FOMO, the fear of missing out, to push you with curiosity, like an adventurer, to see where pushing through this resistance, riding the wave, will take you. And chances are the greater side of you, the more elevated side of you, the comfort zone stretch side of you, the more resilient side of you, and I dare say the happier, more fulfilled side of you waits on the other side of that resistance. That's it from me. I hope you find this helpful, useful. If you've got any resistance strategies that you've been using, please share them. Let's get this message of resistance out to people. So many people are staying reluctant to this. It's helped my clients. I know it will help you. Share your own tips and tools of how you are using resistance, or how you will use these strategies to help you to work with resistance and find yourself on the other side. If you want more, DM me and I'll get you in touch with my team or myself, and we will work with you to help you face and win the game of resistance. That's it from me. Peace out. Namaste.